This is Chi for Yourself. Now, here's Gio.
Hi, and welcome to Chi for Yourself. Our intention is to maintain the good chi, or the essential energy, toward living of a genuine life. And we're happy to have you with us wherever you are in the world today. We're staying with the spring cleaning theme today. Our guest and her husband were living what has come to be accepted as the normal middle-class lifestyle, driving a couple of cars, making the long commutes, and pretty much living well beyond their means. And now they're living the voluntary downsizing, or as they call it, smart sizing dream. Tammy Strobel is a blogger and the author of You Can Buy Happiness, and It's Cheap, How One Woman Radically Simplified Her Life. Now you can too. She takes a look at our possessions, our work, and our relationships, and offers steps we can take toward a life that's more conscious and connected, heartfelt, and happy. And we are happy to welcome Tammy Strobel to Chi for Yourself. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You and your husband Logan set out on the downsizing path kind of early in your relationship, when a lot of couples are making plans to take on more stuff. What was a life like for you up until you realized that you could do more with less?
Well, we were pretty stressed out. We were I should say I was commuting a lot, back and forth to my job. At the time, I was in the investment management industry, and I was just spending a lot of money. You know, I was overweight and just really unhappy. And so we opted to start having conversations about simplifying our lives and trying to kind of reprioritize what was really important to us.
Now, when you started college, you were idealistic in your plans, not unusual for a college kid, but you got more into acquiring things. What changed you?
Well, I mean, there were a couple big things that kind of changed my perspective, but one of the biggest shifts for me was a trip that I took to Chiapas, Mexico. It was a volunteer trip, and when I went to Chiapas, I was pretty shocked by the poverty that I saw there, and it just made me feel really selfish in a lot of ways, because I had plenty, more than enough, and I just thought, you know, I don't need this much stuff. I don't need to spend my money on, you know, extraneous things. Instead, I was like, I just need to kind of rethink how I'm living and what really matters.
So that was your motivation, basically, for making the change. I mean, you had wanted more and more stuff, I guess, up until then. So I mean, that was kind of the path you were on. Talk about how you felt during the cleaning out. Were there times when you wanted, or maybe there are still times when you think about turning back, and you feel maybe you're moving too fast?
Well, you know, I feel like right now we're in a good spot, you know, like we're very happy. We have enough money, enough time. I just feel like at this point we're pretty balanced, but our simplifying process was really slow. You know, we didn't get to live in a small house overnight, and we just took baby steps over basically a 6-year process, and that really worked for us. And at least for me, I found that if I kind of go slowly and take my time with any big life change, then I'm more likely to kind of stick with those behavior changes, if that makes sense. So, and it's less overwhelming too. So I highly recommend taking small steps.
Yeah, I guess from what I've read, the process took you about 5 years in all to get where you really wanted to be. So you would tell people to do it in increments rather than try to bite off a little too much at one time.
Yeah, because, you know, if you have, for example, when we started this process, we were in a 1,200 square foot apartment that was packed with stuff, and if I had tried to declutter in a weekend, I would have been completely overwhelmed. And so we basically started with one section of our apartment at a time, and by doing that, we were able to give our things away to charity or to friends or to even sell them. And it was a better process for us.
Now, are there any things that were tougher to let go of? What were the things that really tugged at your heartstrings as you were tossing stuff out?
Well, the funny thing is, the cars were the hardest part to let go. We ended up selling both of our vehicles over the course of probably 2 or 3 years, and cars are really great tools, but I felt it was just hard to let that go. And now we don't own a car, but we do car sharing. We ride our bikes everywhere. We try and walk as much as we can. So like today, for example, I'm with some family in Mount Shasta, and we carpool here, and we're kind of walking around the city exploring, and so I try and share as much as we can, which has been great. But the cars were really, really tough to let go of.
Mm-hmm. And books and photographs and things like that. Do you have space for those?
Well, it's funny that I'm glad you said that with the books, because that was another challenge for me. Because I had probably, a library of at least 300 to 400 books, and I ended up donating most of them to our local library because they were collecting dust and I wasn't using them. And now I have a very small library of books, of maybe 10 to 15 books at any one time. And when I'm done with the book, I'll either pass it on to a friend or donate it to the library. And that's worked really well for me because I love to buy books.
Well, you've moved stuff certainly out of your living space. If we can take a look now at your pocketbook, things like, cutting up credit cards. Is that a good idea?
Well, it depends on your circumstance, but for me, that was important. I went for a while without using credit cards at all, just because I felt like I was using it as a crutch rather than a tool. And so now I have one credit card that I use for business purposes, and I try and pay in cash for everything else. And I just have personally a tendency to overspend with credit cards, and so I prefer not to use them. So I just, if you can pay in cash, I think that's a great option.
I get a feeling that this move with the credit cards maybe has changed your relationship with the big department stores. Maybe you're not doing that much shopping for those big ticket items anymore.
Well, I still, for example, I purchased a new computer in October of last year, and, so I still buy kind of expensive things, but I'm just more mindful about my purchases. I basically thought about buying this new computer for about 6 months before I actually did it, and I generally have a 30-day policy where if I really want something, I'll wait for 30 days and then buy it. That way I can think about do I really need a new pair of shoes? Is it going to add value to my life? How much am I going to have to work to pay for the item? And just kind of asking those questions has helped me get my spending under control and just to be a little bit more responsible and mindful.
Now, before you concentrated on blogging and living this small-scale life, you were in the money business. You had a very good job. What were those years like?
Well, I worked in the investment management industry for a while, and I'm grateful that I had that experience, but it definitely wasn't a good fit for me with my personality. I just I don't know, it wasn't work that I really connected with. I didn't feel like I was making a difference, and I opted to do a couple of career changes. When I left the investment management industry, I went into kind of social work, and then now, of course, I'm writing for a living, but the investment world it wasn't for me, and I kind of felt like I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, and there was a lot of pressure at work to look a certain way and drive a certain car to sort of fit in, and that was kind of hard for me to cope with, I guess.
What was the reaction like when you told your management and coworkers you were leaving the investment management industry?
Oh, gosh, some folks thought I was crazy, but other people, they were like, well, good for you. You're pursuing your dreams, and, it's probably going to be a hard transition, but life is short, so, do what you love. And I have to say, for the most part, people have been really supportive of our choices. Of course, there are some naysayers, but usually after having conversations about kind of the whys behind our choices, people are like, oh, okay, well, I can understand that. And it usually opens people up for kind of deeper conversations about stuff and relationships and money and all that.
It's kind of an interesting twist in the book. Your parents early on were very supportive of you and your writing endeavors, but yet you decided you needed to get the quote-unquote good job. What was it that moved you to get something, shall we say, more secure and bringing in more money?
Oh, well, I guess with that, I don't know. I feel like in some ways security is an illusion because life is so uncertain. I think it's great to have jobs that you love and that enable you to grow personally. But at least for me, I just, with my work and my personal life, I just try and put my heart into it and kind of remember that everything's uncertain. Like, things can literally change in an instant. So I guess I try and just keep that in the back of my mind with any kind of choices that I make.
Mm-hmm. It sounds as though you're out on an enjoyable outing today. Choosing to downsize could mean changing the type of people we associate with. Are you spending more time with folks who really share your view?
Yeah, we have kind of a diverse friend base. Some of our friends, they live in, small dwellings and are really into living simply, but other friends and family members have large houses and have a couple cars in the garage. So, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have different lifestyle choices and options. So, I don't know. I think our friend base is pretty diverse, and I think that's a good thing.
You say in the book that we're afraid of losing, and that really obstructs our ability to shed stuff. What is it about losing, or what are we afraid of losing that keeps us from parting with all of this stuff?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to security. I mean, at least when it comes to stuff, we all need to have a house and a safe place to call home, and I think humans by nature want to make their homes comfortable and welcoming, and stuff can enhance that. But at the same time, I think you can still have a welcoming home without tons of stuff, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's important to try and find a little bit of balance in terms of what works for you.
The book includes lists of micro actions we can take to cut down on our intake, and one of those that's interesting is to write down our fears. What kind of fears did you write down, or do you see people writing down when they do this?
Oh gosh, well, for me, and at least a lot of my blog readers have said this too, like the biggest thing that prevents them from simplifying is fear of what other people will think, or fear that, they're going to get rid of all this stuff and then have to run out and buy it again. But it's interesting because, I had those same fears, but, they really didn't come true. It's just an interesting phenomenon, and I think it's important to acknowledge your fears and kind of talk about them, but at the same time, I don't think it should hold you back from making choices that would increase your well-being.
Another one of the micro actions is to find a support network. If people are pretty much ensconced in their own little crowd, where do they take a first step toward finding, I don't know, more supportive people or a more supportive environment for what they're doing?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about what we did. I've always tried to just surround myself with friends that support me no matter what, even if we have different life circumstances. Like I was saying earlier, we have a pretty broad network of friends who come from diverse backgrounds, but they're all supportive of what we choose to do. And, I've found a lot of support with our downsizing journey through the blogging world. I started blogging in 2007, and I've met some incredible friends through that medium, and it's been a really great adventure. So, you know, if you're interested in writing or just kind of photography, I think blogging is a great way to connect with like-minded people.
The blog is rowdykittens.com, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because you field a lot of questions from the readers. Is that a typical? I mean, are you open to doing that? If people were to hear this today and want to write to you, will you field their questions?
Oh yeah, I mean, my policy is I try and respond to all my emails, but my inbox is typically always full, but I do my best to get back to people, you know, in 2 to 3 business days, and I'm happy to help folks in any way I can, and a lot of the times I just point people into, you know, like give them ideas for books to read or blogs to follow, things like that, and it's fun corresponding with people and being helpful in that way. So I'm definitely open to that.
We talk a lot on this program about energy and life energy. You read the book Your Money or Your Life, and it had a big effect on you. What did it teach you about life energy?
Oh gosh, well, I love that book. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books. But it definitely, all the exercises in that book really showed me that, you know, we only have so much time in the world, and so how you use your energy is really important. And it's important to think about how you spend your money, because that's energy that, you know, you're going to have to work to make the money to spend it, for example. And so if you're working at a job that you really dislike to buy stuff that you don't need, it's not really a good use of energy. And it's just, I highly recommend that book to readers. So if you have a chance, pick it up at the library or off Amazon.
I know you practice yoga too. What has your yoga practice added to your life?
Oh, I love yoga. So many things. I think one of the biggest benefits of yoga is just I've learned to slow down, and I've learned a lot about mindfulness from my yoga teachers, and it's also great exercise. Like when I took one of my first yoga classes, the next day I was so sore, and I always kind of assumed, oh, yoga's so easy, not so much. But I love it because it's good for you, and it just makes me slow down and be a little bit more mindful in my day-to-day life.
Are you able to do the poses in the tiny house, or do you take the practice outside?
You know, the tiny house is big enough for me to lay out my yoga mat in the great room. So most of the time I do yoga inside, but I have done, you know, yoga poses when I go out for walks and things like that.
I know gratitude is important to you and a big part of your day. What are some of the things that make you feel grateful?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I try and write like gratitude lists in my journal every day, and just you know, for both little things and big things. And so, like for example, this morning when I wrote out my gratitude list, I talked about you know, how grateful I was for a good cup of coffee and this amazing view of Mount Shasta that I'm looking at, and the good weather. And so just kind of doing that every day makes me happy, and especially when I'm feeling sad, coming back to that kind of gratitude practice is really grounding, at least for me.
I like how you've woven into the book the idea of finding your passion, which you've obviously done. People are giving that more and more thought these days. Are there some important pointers, advice, or whatever you could tell people as they try to leave one situation and get to something that reflects more of their genuine life?
Sure. You know, I think everybody has passions, and, you know, for me, that's writing and photography, at least, you know, in my work life. But I recognized that I was really passionate about those things in 2006, 2007-ish, and I wasn't that good at those things yet, if that makes sense. So I think along with finding your passion, it's really important to develop a deliberate practice. And by that, I mean, taking the time to practice your craft every day, whether it's writing or doing podcasts or, improving your communication skills so that you can help people and things like that.
Mm. So now, do you get sightseers and looky-loos who want to drop by for a look at how all of this is done?
Well, we were living in Portland for a few years, and I had a lot of kind of visitors that would come by the little house and take tours and things like that. But we actually moved back to Northern California in the fall of 2012, so last year, and we're in a super rural area, so we haven't gotten as many sightseers.
Yeah, well, now I would think between the blog and your appearances to talk about it, they may just hunt you down. I don't know. It's a great idea. Now there's a company that makes these tiny houses that can design them for you. Is that right?
Yeah, there are actually a number of companies that so for Portland Alternative Dwellings designed and built our little house, and they're fantastic, fantastic people. And Tumbleweed Tiny House Company is another resource, and then the other one I think is called Four Lights. But I'm just kind of switching a few. But if you kind of want to research more about tiny houses, I'd recommend going to the Tiny House blog. And my friend Kent Griswold runs that site, and he's got tons of resources about small homes there.
A final question, we'll let you go. What advice do you have for people who are trying for the very first time to live and to make their choices more deliberately?
Well, I think it's really important to take a step back and look at kind of all areas of your life. So, family, work, your passion, your health, both physical and emotional, and kind of looking at it from a holistic viewpoint and thinking about, okay, well, where do I want to go in 2 years or 5 years, and kind of, writing out your dreams and aspirations. And then once you kind of have that down, it can help guide you to make the next step, if that makes sense. When Logan and I started this process, we had a lot of conversations about where we wanted to go and where we wanted to live and what we wanted to do for work, and kind of figuring that out first helped inform our choices.
So communication, if you are living with a mate or someone else is in your life, you really have to communicate about these things, right?
Oh, definitely. It's super important to just kind of stay on the same page, and it's, really, I think, essential to happiness, whether it's, communicating with your spouse or family members or friends. It just makes life a little bit easier, and it will help people understand your choices and kind of vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Well, the book is You Can Buy Happiness, and it's cheap. One woman radically simplified her life, and how you can too. Tammy Strobel, also with the blog rowdykittens.com, and you have plenty of videos as well on your YouTube page, which kind of tie in nicely to the blog. So I take it you'll keep blogging and keep answering our questions.
Definitely.
All right, and we'll keep watching and keep looking for more from you. I'll invite you back and wish you well, and do come back to us and talk with us again.
That would be lovely. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was fun.
All right, Tammy, take care, and like I said, we'll talk to you again. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your day.